Well, good morning, everyone. This is Chris Kopak, Assistant Vice President, Facilities Management at the University of Arizona, also the current APPA President. This is our monthly webinar series that has been very successful. We're getting a lot of good positive feedback. Today we got a great topic, and it's a partnership with Jacobs and our Thought Leaders program. And today we'll be on transforming facilities to achieve student success. The current trends impacting our students. Students are vital to our universities, and that's why we're all in the facilities management to help our students have a great experience and graduate. Today we have Nina Woolman. We appreciate it very much. Nina also sits on the APPA board as an at-large member, as a business partner from Jacobs Building and Infrastructure and Advanced Facilities Strategic Consulting. So Nina, thank you for joining us. In addition, we have Mike O'Connor. Mike is the interim Associate Vice Chancellor of Facilities at the University of North Carolina School of Arts. And Mike, we appreciate you taking time as we do Nina. A couple of housekeeping items. These webinars qualify for CEUs. And so if you have your EFP or CEFP, this will definitely qualify. You can contact main office at APPA to get the information. In addition, if you have any questions as prior, feel free to type those questions, send them to us, and we're going to go ahead and just intertwine questions throughout the presentation this morning or this afternoon, depending where you're at. And our APPA webinar series will continue normally on Thursday, but we're going to do one on Tuesday in July. That will be on July 24th, and I'll go over that before we wrap up. So with that said, transforming facilities to achieve student success. Nina and Mike, we appreciate it again. Go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris, and good morning and good afternoon to everybody on the line. Start by just introducing some of the concepts of the Thought Leaders series. The whole Thought Leaders series was set up to start helping you dive in to understand what issues your campuses are facing. And over the years, we've covered many subjects. Some of these may be familiar to you. Some of them may be long-standing issues. Some of them may be new issues. But in one of the most recent Thought Leader series, we did address student success, and that being an issue that every campus faces, and really is looking at how to improve the institutional outcomes and how facilities can support those institutional outcomes. The good news is APPA is here to help when we're looking at these significant issues facing today's campuses. And there's a great quote by Peter Drucker that the best way to change the future is to invent it. So if you don't know the solutions today, what APPA brings to you is opportunities to evaluate what those changes can be and how to get a seat at the table to have a discussion around that. So let me just first introduce you to the Thought Leaders series for those of you that have not heard this before or not familiar with what it is. In 2005, APPA began a transformative process really to move from an emphasis on telling the story of our past experiences to a focus on the future. Not only preparing the membership for the demands that changes in higher education will bring, but the training of the future leaders for our facilities management organizations. And the Thought Leader Symposium was created to generate new knowledge necessary to meet this challenge. And so what the Thought Leaders series is an event that covers about 2 days, brings in leadership from all levels of the higher education organizations, from chancellors and presidents, down to CFOs, to CIOs, to heads of student affairs, student housing, and as well as several facilities managers, several of the senior facility officers from your organizations, to engage in a discussion and really distill down major trends and issues impacting the future of higher education. The whole goal of this is really to identify what are the driving forces for change on a campus. What are those trends? Identifying critical facilities issues, enhancing institutional dialogue, connecting goals of the facilities operation with educational outcomes, all for the purposes of developing a positive impact on the future state of the educational facility environment. So, rethinking how these parts and pieces come together, it's looking at driving forces. What is happening with enrollment? What's happening with recruitment and retention? what's happening with new programs on campuses. Sometimes there are some very provocative questions that we're asking. Several years ago, there was a topic on bricks to clicks. And I remember Lander starting out the event saying, what happens or what is your opinion on the future of higher education? Will electronic education take place or take precedence over physical education in the classroom environment? And it's provocative questions like that ask us or put our mind around what can really be changing in the education environment and how can facilities support that change. The outcome of the thought leaders is an executive summary, is the monograph, and you'll see the monograph published in the Facilities Manager magazine. It's presented at the Senior Facilities Officers Summit. The results of some of these ideas and provocative questions are research topics at CFAR, the CFAR group, the Centers for Facilities Research, then tackles. It also sets a precedence for several educational programs and conference sessions that come in following years. While we were looking at space several years ago, there are still articles coming out in Facility Manager and at conferences addressing some of the challenges that happen with space on campus, how to better utilize the facility campus because the square foot not built is a square foot not maintained. But we know there's a lot of cultural challenges around that as well. So, while we can provide the executive summary and background on the detail of the monograph, how can you really use the Thought Leader series to help you on campus? It's a great tool to inform yourself of trends that you may not be seeing on your campus yet, but allows you to understand how others are experiencing them to get in front of them. It's a great way to have discussions among your peers, whether it be in local events from drive-ins, on webinars like this, at the annual conference, or even at the regional conferences. Ways to engage your staff. As you're thinking about succession planning and the next generation that's coming up in your organization, are they prepared for these challenges? APPA is a great advocate for membership to get a seat at the table, to sit down and discuss how facilities can really move the needle for an organization. So the topics that come out of the thought leaders really help have a way of informing the leadership or informing your conversation with leadership. But overall, it does engage the campus in a uniform discussion of ways to improve. As I mentioned, there have been past topics of the Thought Leader series ranging from technology, sustainability, as I mentioned, space, the rising cost of higher education, leveraging facility assets for institutional outcomes, and even remaking the facilities organization. And that was a great session where we sat down and had various subject matter experts from other industries, one in particular being Marriott, coming in and telling their story of them being a service organization and then how it changed their outcomes by just changing the culture of their organization. So in 2017, our study, our focus was on student success through facilities modernization. So with that being said, Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you to walk through the details of those findings.
Sorry about a little technical difficulty there, but welcome everybody. I'm glad to be here. I've been very lucky to be able to participate in probably 5 or 6 or 7 of these thought leaders, and they are a great opportunity. So if you ever get the call to be asked to participate, I'd highly recommend it. I kind of joke with people, you get together with a group of very smart, very highly talented people, which is why I'm not sure why I was invited, but you get with that group and you get to almost spend a few days bending spoons with your mind to tackle these really difficult questions. And so what we're going to talk about today is student success. So if we can get the next slide. Okay, so when APPA took this on and decided this topic, it sounded pretty easy, right? Student success started showing up as a pretty popular theme across you read about it in the Chronicle, you read it in a bunch of different places, and people are wondering, is the cost of higher education really worth it? And so, we need to think about that, because we had to figure out how does the facilities impact or have a role in helping student success. And so, to me, it sounded pretty simple. We'll come in, we'll define student success, but it was pretty amazing when we got everybody in the room and we asked them, what does student success mean to you? And we put up a big wall, and everybody defined it and put stickies on the wall, and it was all over the map. Every institution, every group has a different definition for defining student success than you would think, right? So what is student success? Is it student retention? Is it educational attainment, academic achievement? Do we just want people to be able to get good jobs? Or is it, about personal development? And I think it has a great deal to do, defining that student success, has to do with the mission and what your particular university is trying to do. Because the mission for a big research-intensive school versus like where I'm currently as the interim at a school of the arts, a very arts-oriented school, is completely different. I mean, they're completely different. So how I would define student success on this campus as opposed into my last position at Appalachian State University, completely different. And it really opens our eyes on how we as facility folks, we really have to think about, what is that character? And it behooves us, I think, to get an idea when you come to APPA events, to look at your institution or other institutions from a different viewpoint and cross-cut and look at it and say, how does my university differ? And so how may I learn maybe something from somebody else or whatever to apply towards defining to me what student success is all about? And it's a really critical question, right? And we've been talking about this in APPA for a long time. We all hear the stories about a student makes their decision to attend a university when the first 10 minutes of walking on a campus. And I heard that, and I've heard that ever since I've gotten into higher education, and I kind of questioned it. I wasn't sure about it. But then I talked to a lot of my peers. We were all aging about the same time, and our children were, leaving high school, transitioning into college. And it was amazing how many of us shared the same kind of experience where we took our children on a campus tour, and we would get to the campus that my daughter happened to pick, 4 or 5 universities that we wanted to tour. And the very first one we went to, I'll keep these names nameless, or these universities nameless. Within 5 minutes of walking on the campus, my daughter sat down and she said, I hope you're not upset with me, but this isn't the school for me. And so why is that? Because it's that first impression when you walk on the campus. What do the grounds look like? She didn't go in. She hadn't talked to a professor yet. She hadn't been in a classroom. She hadn't interfaced with anybody. But when she walked on the campus, she saw what the grounds looked like, what the buildings looked like, saw the students walking around, what were they wearing, how were they dressed, how were they interacting with each other or not interacting with each other, which is kind of critical. She said one of the campuses we were on is, hey, Dad, why is everybody on their cell phone and not talking to each other? And so, that first initial impression is so critical, and we can't have student success if we don't get them in the door to start out with. So if people tell you facilities has nothing to do with student success, they're completely crazy, right? We have a profound impact on student success. And let me give you, I'm going to take this slide a little bit longer here. So back when I was in the Navy, this was back in the 90s when the war was over. We had the peace dividends, some of the stuff, the Berlin Wall had fallen, and we started going through this thing called BRAC, base realignment and closure, where we were closing military installations because we couldn't afford them. And people in Capitol Hill said, the military is unaffordable. We've got all these buildings and all these support structures for all these troops, and we don't need them. And so the military was struggling to find a way to say, how does facilities support the mission of the military? And so what is the mission of the military? Well, Microsoft had a pretty good vision and mission. Their vision and mission was, we need a PC on every desk. That was a big deal, right? A PC on every desk. If they do that, Microsoft's going to be successful. The military basically brings theirs down to is ordnance on target, right? That's bombs, that's bullets, that's torpedoes hitting their intended target and destroying the enemy's ability to wage war. And so, but what does a bunch of bases and stations back in the United States have to do with these trigger pullers over, around the world in the Middle East or wherever, getting ordnance on target? And what we're able to kind of pull together is say, listen, when these guys and gals go overseas, they're out there on their own. They need to feel that their families are being taken care of back on the home front. So if they're worried about whether their spouse or their children are getting a good education, whether they're safe, whether they're in a good neighborhood, whether they're going to good schools. It's going to take away from their ability to concentrate on their mission, which is putting those bullets on target, right? So we're able to talk and come up with a metric or a way to say, listen, these facilities stateside are huge to success of our warfighters at the tip of the spear. And we've got to take that same kind of mentality with our facilities and say to ourselves, so how does my facilities department enable a student or not enable or to disable a student from being able to be successful at your particular institution in the mission or the vision that that kid has come to your school for, right? So that's really critical. And if we haven't thought about that, that's one of the great things I think about the thought leaders. It gives you that ability to start thinking about those things and coming up with, strategies to see how we can assist our folks, our colleagues with that. So if I can get to the next slide, please.
Hey,
okay.
Mike,
yep.
Mike, this is Chris, if I can jump in. We got a good
Sure.
question. It's more on the metrics and the detail where we're getting the information. So Sally, who is with Nakubo, and Nakubo is a great partner with APPA, our chief financial officers of our universities and colleges. Sally's asking, she's heard routinely about the 10 minutes that students are making decisions. Where is that data coming from? Where are those metrics coming from? Because I know routinely we've heard that, and I believe we've heard that also through some studies that have been done through APPA.
Correct. So the first time I heard about it was probably 10 years ago. And when there was a study done, and I may get the school wrong, but it was either like Louisiana State, LSU, or one of the schools down there, Ole Miss or somebody, had done a study on that, and there was some data about it. So I'd have to go back a ways to find it, but there has been a study that does that. And I'll tell you, anecdotally, everybody I've talked to, my peers who've had to put kids through college, have all pretty much experienced the same thing when they took their kids. So something is definitely going on there. And I experienced it.
And Mike, if I may interrupt, I think it was one of APPA's first CFAR projects where David Kane did a research study on that of what were the kind of the return on perception that a campus has for recruitment and retention. And there has been recent discussion about a rejuvenation of that study. So if that's something that we can follow up after this call, we'd be happy to do so.
That's perfect. And what we'll do, too, is all the questions that are being asked, we will go ahead and answer those and send those out to the APPA website. And then, Nina, as you mentioned, too, you mentioned CFAR. There may be some folks on the line aren't familiar with that because APPA has a huge database of information. What is CFAR, Nina?
It's the Center for Facilities Research, where APPA can team with outside organizations or with institutions or even with students on doing research studies that affect the facility management industry. So there have been studies done that kind of range the gamut from custodial to ground studies on labor, almost labor time studies to, like I mentioned, the study of return on perception of what is it that attracts a student to a campus. So it really ranges the gamut from very detailed studies to more big picture studies, and has been in place, I think, about either the year before or the year after the Thought Leader series started, so in the early 2000s. So it's been around at least a decade.
Perfect. And those who may not be familiar with it, if you do go to our webpage, not only can you get access into the webinars and the audio and any attachments, you'll have a copy of the PowerPoint. You have a past CFAR projects. You have the Book of Knowledge, which actually APPA is transforming that. We're going to make that a Google search that you'll be able to find any topic available. That's in the works right now. And then also we have our best practices. And we'll be revamping our entire website over the next year. So thanks, Nina. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. So back to the student success piece here. So when we started this whole thing out, we all got together and started bending spoons with our mind. We looked at four focus areas. And I'll talk a little bit about the first one already, and we'll get more into defining student success as this webinar goes on. But we also thought that there's also a piece that has to deal with how we operate our organizations and how they integrate and interact with our clients. And when I say our clients, I mean that's our students, our professors, our administrators, and everybody else. And so what we realize is that we really have to start thinking about we can't be in the trenches anymore. We've all been through the bad downturn, and everybody's been complaining about our budgets being cut. Some are still undergoing that. Fortunately, in the state of North Carolina, that trend has kind of bottomed out. I think we hit bottom last year, and we're starting to come out the other, starting to see that trend get some funding again. So we need to come out of our shells and out of the trenches and start thinking more outward instead of the inward mindset that we have often in our organizations, and thinking about how we can really support our clients. And it's more than just keeping buildings clean and the grass cut. We have to go out and listen and find out what challenges are our faculty having in being able to interact with their students. Do they have the proper space? Do they have decent laboratories, or whatever it may be, or outside space, or meeting space, or whatever they need for their pedagogy? And we got to be able to, again, sit down and listen and not be defensive, right? And it's so easy in facilities because we always get our teeth kicked in. Not all of us, but a lot of us too, get our teeth kicked in over, this isn't fixed when we don't even have the budget to do it or whatever. But we got to really stop and say, okay, I'm going to switch my mind, my thinking from not what's impacting me or what's in it for me. It's just, how can I help my client? What is it about the client that I can do to really, really help them do their best work? All right. So we did this a few years ago with the Senior Facilities Officer workshop, and we had a couple things when we were out in San Diego with the national conference. And there's a group out there called the Arbinger Institute. And so if you haven't heard of them, I'd recommend you write that down right now. It's called Arbinger Institute, Arbinger, Arbinger Institute. And there's been several books that they've written. And one is called The Outward Mindset, and another one is Leadership and Self-Deception. And they have a third one, it's kind of a little more self-focused, but it's called The Anatomy of Peace. But what it really talks about is turning your chair around and facing your client and getting into a good, deep conversation, and making sure that you're, the old saying of, make sure you listen, seek to listen first before you seek to be understood. Right. So listen to what their problems are. Think about them, internalize them, take the time. Don't react immediately. So I think it's a big thing we're going to have to start doing to really kind of transform facilities, organizations of the future, is going from that outward, from the inward mindset that we've all been in to a more outward that's more focused on collaboration. The next thing is we have to talk about is, modernization versus deferred maintenance and deferred maintenance backlog. I'm going to talk a little bit more of that in a future slide. But if all we do is fix what we got, and that's all we're doing is fixing it, we're not going to be making any progress in this rapidly technology changing world that we live in today. So again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And finally, we put together 10 questions, generated 10 questions that we all need to ask ourselves. And unfortunately, you're all going to have to wait to the entire presentation before you get to the good stuff. But hang in there, and we'll get through that fairly quickly, and then we'll get some questions from you as well. Okay, next slide, if I may. Okay. So student success, what is it? We got to talk. We talked a little bit to get there. I know it's hard to get feedback from folks on this webinar, but if anyone has a great definition, please type it in the question box. It'd be interesting to see what people's definition of student success is. As a parent, my definition of student success for my daughter was getting her through college in 4 years, out of the house and off the payroll. And I'm pleased to announce that as of about 6 months ago, I achieved all of that. And through in 4 years, and she's out the door, and she's got a good job, and she's working. That's what I think student success is. If I asked my daughter what her definition of student success was, I don't think it would be me throwing her out of the house and making her get a good job. But anyway, it's something we all need to think about. Okay, but why is it important? Why is student success so important? And there's some great stuff up here on the slide. If we want to continue to prosper as a nation and to have the most creative, and innovative minds, right? We all say we're the most creative place in the world, this country of ours. We have to ensure we are meeting our student needs and providing our nation with those future leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, engineers, doctors, lawyers, social workers, you name it. I find it's very interesting. You know, everybody right now is focusing on STEM, 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 STEM. Science, technology, engineering, math. I've left that world and dropped into the middle of I think the nation's only public conservatory, really broad public conservatory, everything from film to, it's amazing. And I'm down here in this group and I'm going, wow, I never knew this existed. And wow, how important it is to creativity. These are the kids that are developing the Netflix content. They're doing all the back of the, backstage stuff and acting and all this stuff, and how enriching that makes us as a culture. Very important, right? So we've got to be able to make our students successful so we as a nation can be successful. And then, there's been some crises recently that have really focused our intention, right? As never before on student success. The need for education has never been greater, and the cost, and the big one, we've talked about this, the cost of higher education. It was a previous thought leaders topic. To the student has never been higher, right? And we're taking a lot of hits. In North Carolina, we're being constantly beat up by our board of governors, and justifiably so. To why is our cost so high? Why do you keep trying to build these great, one hand we're trying to attract students with these great, student rec centers and the best apartments in the world, but then all the costs we're laying on to attend higher education. It's great that they get here, but then we can't hold on to it because they can't afford to stay because of the debt load we have and we're trying to take care of. So it's a critical problem, and we really need to think hard about it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here are some of the reasons, some of the metrics or reasons behind why we're tackling about this stuff. So look at that. Of the last 11.6 million jobs created after the, quote, Great Recession, 8.5 million went to those with at least a bachelor's degree. And I'd be interested, now this slide's slightly dated, right? Because we did this about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we've all seen in the last year or two, unemployment rates are incredibly low. And I'm sure that there's a lot more people now getting employed without a bachelor's degree because of the demand. But when times are tough, the bachelor's degree tends to, weather the storm better than not having a bachelor's degree. Another 3 million jobs with individuals with an associate's degree or some college education, right? So I think our community colleges are becoming more and more important because of all the technological stuff that is going on in our nation. We got to have trained technicians with associate's degree to be able to run these systems. I mean, on our campuses now, we have these incredible HVAC, Johnson Control, you pick your control company, Metasys systems that are, managing through a BACnet programming language, all of these millions of devices. I think at App State, when I left there, we had 30,000 devices under control, and we were adding 80,000 devices under control, and we were adding a new college, one building that had 30,000 devices that we were going to have to control. And where are the people that are going to be able to manage, repair, maintain, operate, squeeze the energy that you can get out of these systems, unless you have some training, in the computer sciences or whatever to be able to do it. So critical. About only 30 jobs were open to those with only a high school education. I think that we all see that trend continuing. So the long-term financial payoff, and this is where, it's huge, right? Yes, students have to take on a lot of debt, but over their lifetime, kind of like when you buy a house, it's got a long mortgage, but you're going to be living it for 30 years. A bachelor's degree will earn 40% more over the course of lives than somebody with a high school diploma. So that's a pretty big delta. And then, the more you earn, the economy churns more, people are spending more. It's just very important to our economy. And then look at that average undergraduate debt for the class of 2015, and that's 15. So what's 3 years post now? Staggering 30,100. I bet you it's much higher now, right? 30,100 in debt coming out of college. A lot of us, I'm an older guy. I was fortunate. I got out of college before colleges got expensive, and states were still doing a lot of access for the. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to get my computer to wake up. Well, for them to be able to graduate on time and get out. So, all right, Nina, next slide. Okay, so how does a facility organization contribute to student success? Well, the first bullet I kind of laugh at here, right? It's safe. We got to create safe, accessible, clean, and functional spaces. So if you are at a university and you can proudly say that, my university, I've got safe, accessible, clean, and functional spaces, congratulations, you're average, right? Because that's the minimal of what we need to do to be able to, define or take care of what we need to do. So give me 1 second here, if you don't mind. I'm having a little technical difficulty on my end. My computer went to sleep. And okay, so got it back up now. So thank you for that. And so what do we have to do to continue student success? We've got to be able to make sure we have learning spaces that are appropriate for the pedagogy, right? And I'll give an example down here at UNC School of the Arts. It's unbelievable what these folks have. You walk into the film school and you walk, it's like walking onto a backstage lot in Hollywood. And they've got these big, huge open venues where they have all these lights and cameras. And now they're starting this program where they're doing the virtual reality, where they put the little dots on people and they film them, and then they make characters virtually by how people move and act. And so you need a very specialized space to be able to do that. If all we're doing is keeping our buildings safe, accessible, clean, and functional from their original intention, the way they're originally built, and that's a lot of the way we're being funded, we're not keeping up with the pedagogical changes. So it's really important that we do that. Technology is ubiquitous everywhere. I mean, we all now, when I first got to the university, I remember we had Wi-Fi. I said, that's pretty cool, but we only had Wi-Fi in certain buildings. And then it was, we get Wi-Fi in most of the classrooms. And now when I was leaving, it was, we got to have Wi-Fi outside everywhere. 100% coverage of that campus to be on Wi-Fi with all their Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled devices. The students can have an enriching environment no matter where they are. You can sit out in the back 40, bring up your homework. You can be on a school bus or a charter bus on the way to a sporting event as a student athlete, be able to do your homework online through the bus with a Wi-Fi or cellular connection, just like you haven't left the university or sitting in your dorm room, right? So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to, if you haven't done this kind of stuff, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, being able to keep up. We've got to be able to allow learning to occur where the students are, off campus, on campus, you name it, they've got to be able to do it. We've got to be able to demonstrate the sustainable campus. Now, sustainability has kind of taken a backseat lately with all the other noise that's going on in this nation, but it's still out there. It's the tip of the iceberg or whatever. We still got issues with that, and our students, I still think a great deal of our students are still concerned with sustainability. And sustainability, I think, is finally coming around to a much more broader definition. We always thought sustainability as being just green and making things energy efficient. But part of sustainability is being an affordable college. Because if the students can't afford to come to your college, you're not going to have any students, and that ain't sustainable, right? So we've got to think about sustainability in a much more broad way. And I think part of this, student success really helps us try to capture, are we doing everything in the best way we can to make our campus truly sustainable and our students successful. We have to engage our students with valuable learning experience and academic integration, right? So how can you do that? Well, at our campus, we did a bunch of did our internal space audit with students. We took kids out of the GIS program and the building management program and allowed them to go out into our buildings and survey space and do their CAD maps and floor plans and validate. They got great experience doing that. We were able to pay them to do that. We just did a outside GIS map of our entire campus, and we're having students putting layers, creating layers, like the best running routes is a layer you can click on or click off, or the best, what's the shortest distance to a class from building to building, what's the best pathway. Students can take on that, get some learning integration, help us enrich what we're doing, working on the energy side. There's a bunch of different ways. We have a couple students help us with our Facebook page and our helping with our social media. I'm terrible at that stuff. I can't even figure out Facebook. It terrifies me to even go on that thing. But we have students that do it, and when you find out that your Board of Trustees members are leaving great positive comments on your Facebook page because of some great posts and whatnot, it's transformative. I mean, it's a great way to get your message out on a lot of stuff. And I think we did some metrics at our university. Our university webpage got 10 hits a month, and our Facebook page got 20,000 or 30,000, right? And our Twitter feed or whatever got, I'm tweet, so I don't know how you tweet it, but it tweeted something, but it was a big number. But anyway, so the next big thing is we got to ensure that our facilities are adapted and modernized to create learning environments. So let's talk a little bit on this next slide on modernization. We can. Oh, give me a second here again. I'm sorry, a little problem with this. I'm using a laptop, and I'm not used to using a laptop. So, we talked earlier about being able to collaborate, connect, create, and add value. Again, that's what we're going to have to do. We have to approach this whole thing of how we operate our organizations in a completely different mindset than we've done in the past. And so, if you're saying no to your customers, or worse yet, you say no to your people, so that when you go out on the campus and you hear your technicians or your groundskeepers or your housekeepers telling your customers, no, we can't do that. We can't afford that. We're not going to do that. We don't want to be there. That ain't going to help us, right? I always told my folks, I heard that at one point early on in the big budget cuts after the Great Recession. I heard a couple of my folks saying that, and I brought them all in. I said, listen, we can't talk like that. Your job is to support them. And if you can't help them, you come to me, and I'll be the person to tell them, say no. Or I'll find the resources some way or some kind of a way where we can say yes. And we're going to help these folks, help them create and come up with solutions to fix their problems or help them with their issues in the classroom or where it may be on campus. Okay, next slide, please. So this should be facilities modernization is a key component. This is just so huge. So, the process of investing in updates and upgrades and renovations of buildings and infrastructure, we kind of do a little bit of that. We've all done that, right? We get the paint and we get the, new HVAC systems, we get the new roofs, and if the windows are 35 years old, we'll replace the windows, right? And that kind of stuff. And I think we're all starting to get a handle or turn the corner on reducing energy use by, if we had an air conditioning unit that was a 5 SEER unit or something, or 8 SEER unit, and we're going to replace it with something that's like a 20 SEER unit, so that we got the most energy efficiency we can out of the equipment we're putting in. But one thing we haven't really done a great deal with, I think, is really thinking forward, is adapting when we modernize our spaces to truly meet academic needs and programmatic needs, right? So when we're doing these transformations, we really got to think about that. How are we going to take this old building? What are we going to do to it to make it really support the future and not the past, right? We don't want to go put blackboards back in, right, or chalkboards. We may want to put whiteboards, but not chalkboards, or maybe smart boards. But how are we going to, make the space more appropriate for the type of learning we need? And you're not going to know that if you have an inward mindset, because you're just going to say, well, we're just going to do it the way we always did it. You got to sit down with your clients. You got to go out and have an outward mindset. First, seek to understand before being understood, and swapping that around and really listening and saying, okay, now I get it. I get why this is so important to our mission to modernize this facility and instead of just rehabilitate it. So the last three things on that slide are really different from just maintaining the status quo, right? So let's keep talking about this facilities modernization. So the next slide, please. So changing the model for facilities modernization, we got to change our model from capital renewal, deferred maintenance, to modernization. And this is a big change for us, right? Because we've been going down to our legislatures and talking about our deferred maintenance needs. We all got, $600 million worth of deferred maintenance needs on my campus. And it's starting, it's fallen on deaf ears. They're tired of hearing it. Why? You always come back and always need more. So I think if we could find a way to say, instead of we need more money to fix what's broke, we need to also say, not only are we going to fix what's broke, but we're going to transform and make this place more efficient, We're going to be able to make students more successful because we're going to give them the lab space that's appropriate for the classes and courses they're taking. We're going to be able to give them the training they need to be successful as engineers, entrepreneurs, artists, or whatever it may be. And really thinking about that modernization process. I really like this word. I know there's some controversy amongst APPA right now. Some of the members saying, we shouldn't be changing this name right now. But I believe modernization is more appropriate than just renewal, right? Because we need to keep up with this rapidly changing technological revolution that's going out there. So we got to look at, from facilities objectives to the objectives and facing others. Not what's my problem. My staff, I'm short-staffed, I've got this, I've got that. Again, outward focus. From incremental reinvestment to reduce deferred maintenance to strategic investment, right? And building that case we can't make a silk purse out of that sow's ear of a building. No matter how much paint, how much plaster, how many walls we move, it can't support the technology. It doesn't have the ability. It doesn't have the floor to ceiling. It doesn't whatever. And we got to get creative about saying, hey, we don't want to put money into this. This is a total waste of time. And I know it's going to be tough for everybody, right? Everybody's rolling their eyes saying, yeah, everybody says that. But you've got to be creative and you got to build those cases. And you got to be able to tie it back again to student success. Because if you talk by doing this project, we're going to improve graduation rates, reduce loss or improve retention from year to year. It's going to, bring in more grant money, whatever you can tie to, that student success model. You're going to have more people on your team at your university listening to you. And if you got more people and you get them all together, they're going to speak with a much louder voice than just with the facilities guy standing out there in the middle of the quad saying, we need to rip this building down. It's a terrible building. But if everybody together is speaking it, and the chancellor gets the message, and the trustees get the message, and your board of governors or whatever it may be, legislatures get the message that, hey, this project has teeth. It's going to do something big. It's going to have tangible results. It's going to be a heck of a lot easier in this environment to get funding for something like that. Okay, and then from a process-driven design model, which is the old days, right? We'd all come in, and the most painful thing is dragging requirements out of your client. What do you need? Oh, I need a dance studio. Okay, dance studio. What do you need in a dance studio? How big is it? Oh, just big enough. No, I need to know how big. Is it be 100 feet wide, 200 feet wide? How tall does it have to be? Does it have to be air conditioned? Does it need a sprung floor? Learned about that this week. I didn't even know what a sprung floor was, but apparently dancers have to have a certain springy floor to be able to dance on. So what does that need? Dragging those requirements out of it has always been very difficult, but we've always kind of done it in a silo. So what we need to do is shift to a much more collaborative model and bringing more people in to ensure that, we're not just dealing with one client. We're listening to other folks. We're talking to students. We're talking to more faculty members, maybe other people that share that space and don't have a voice because they weren't told that this was going on. But if you bring the collaborative team together, you're going to get all the input you're going to need to make the design for that facility much easier and much more, strategic for the university, because you're going to have a piece of property that's going to be heavily utilized. All right, next slide, please. So why collaboration? Again, things are changing rapidly in pedagogy. I think most universities now are talking about, programs that cross-cut. You may have somebody in chemistry working with somebody in the business entrepreneur program who's working with the mechanical engineering program to develop this really cool thing, where in the old days that would all be done in stovepipes at the student level. Now they're trying to bring in, kind of like the Google model, bring everybody into a big room and mash them up and see what these clever young students can create, right? So you got to be able to collaborate. Pedagogy is completely changing. We've talked about the technology, and I have no idea where learning environments are going. I mean, a few years ago, we were talking about the virtual university. Remember, can anybody even name right now what were those virtual universities that were all online? One started with a C, I think. I can't even quite remember. But anyway, but a few years ago, I was convinced for a while there that, oh my gosh, brick and mortar universities are going away, and we're going to go do everything online. Well, obviously that didn't come, but things are changing. I think that will change over time, and we're going to see more and more of that. And our state, our legislature just welcomed in the Western Governors College or University, which is a online university that was originally put together by the 4 governors of the 4 corner states, like Colorado, New Mexico. I can't remember what the 4 corner states are, but those 4 corners out there in flyover country. And they put this, a way to be able to serve their students are so far flung because the distances are so huge. North Carolina takes the Western Governors Group and invites them to North Carolina to do online training because they know how important it is to get people trained up, for the environment. And North Carolina is growing greatly in the Raleigh-Durham area. We've got Google coming in and Apple coming in, and we're trying to fight, or Amazon coming in, and we're trying to, Google and Amazon actually, and we're trying to fight for the Amazon headquarters. Anyway, it's amazing how important education is to attracting the good firms these days, and they're not going to show up if you don't have a trained workforce. So, and then of course, financial resources and pressures. We all know that there's always that one college that has all the money, and then there's always the college that is the have-not. Well, how can you help spread that butter a little more thinly and evenly to make sure that our students are getting that rich environment? And then finally, the price of failure is high, folks. So if we don't do this right, if we don't support and have our students, if they're not successful, they're not going to come, right? So if our students aren't graduating and getting jobs, and it's because we didn't help create that environment, then it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy of a downward death spiral for our university because, kids don't show up, revenues decrease, got to cut programs, don't have money to fix things get worse and worse. So the price is really high, and that's just on our campus, but not just for our campus, but our nation. We've got to have, if we want to keep up with the Joneses around the world today, we've got to have the most talented and creative young students in the world. All right, next slide, please. So we talked a lot about this, so I'm just going to run through these really fast. Changing the culture, current CRDM, new paradigm modernization. Getting user input to collaboration. Inward mindset, outward mindset. Facility objectives, minor investments to objectives and challenges facing others. Decreasing deferred maintenance to strategic investment. And then competing goals amongst ourselves and a singular vision for our university. And I mean, what a great way to come up with a singular vision, but to define it through student success. Okay, next slide. Okay, modernization through collaboration. I'm going to have to run through these quickly because I think we're going to start running out of time soon. But increased stakeholder engagement, campus-wide agreement on facilities priorities. And I give an example here I call the IPL, which is an integrated priority list. And that's where what I did is I went out and I met with all the deans twice a year, and I asked them what is their most important project, and I would capture that, and then I would have a final meeting or several final meetings where I'd put all those projects on a list, and I'd give it back to the deans and say, okay, you've got $10 million worth of requirements on the list, and we got $3 million of funding. You guys tell me what you think are the top priorities. Of course, I would break out the real critical stuff, the fire problems or the elevator or roof failures or something like that. But some of their improvement needs or whatever, I'd let them prioritize and make the decisions amongst themselves. Very collaborative. So they have ownership in the problem. Alignment with student success efforts, getting that strong buy-in from your colleagues, shared ownership, and that all leads to increased confidence and trust is what we're looking for. So, okay, and wrapping it up here soon. So here are your 10 questions. Next slide, 10 questions. So I'll let you read through these, but I'll just hit a few of them real quick, and then you guys can get these slides and ask yourself, take the time to really think about that, So how does your campus define student success after hearing this? How do you define it? I'm still working on School of the Arts here. I'm not there yet, but I'm excited about it. And how does your new quote modernization program contribute to that student success? Are we being a barrier? How do we prioritize our needs? How do we establish and maintain discipline in the facilities renewal or revitalization process? This is a really difficult one with an outward mindset, but if you've done it right and you've built trust and confidence, how do you say no without alienating those who participate in the collaboration? But if you play this right and you've built that trust and confidence in your organization, that you're all working for the same thing and pulling the same direction, that when you say no, they're going to understand. They're going to understand. They get it. They're not stupid. They'll figure it out, and they'll be right there with you. And they'll say, yeah, this is hard. Let me see if there's a way I can help us get to yes. So that's going to be real critical. And then how do we communicate the risk of using capital dollars that doesn't work further to further modernization, right? Because we've all got the problems on campus of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, or the biggest guy in the room or gal in the room with the highest political clout gets the project when everybody else suffers. So that's going to take some effort. But a lot of great questions in here for you to sit back and take a few, take an hour some day, the rest of this week, take an hour aside, get out your pen and pencil or on your computer, however you like to do it, and try to answer these questions, and it may open your eyes to quite a few things. So, all right, next slide, please. Okay, little quote there, the future is won by those creating the future and not by the ones trying to maintain the status quo, right? We got to all move forward. So it's your choice. So take a hold of this APPA Thought Leaders Monograph and put it to work for you, and I think you'll get a great deal out of that. So, I guess at this point, the moderator would go to questions.
That's exactly it, Mike. Thank you, and Nina, we appreciate your input also. And Mike, this is your first time doing one of these. Is that correct?
Correct.
Outstanding job. We appreciate your time and effort and passion. And maybe one of the questions that came up, and we have a lot of folks still on the line here, and a lot of questions coming in. We probably run out of time. Is saying no. The facilities folks, we just don't know how to say no. So maybe elaborate on one of your top 10 questions, because that is a difficult one. We can't do everything.
Yeah. So I'll run it back real fast. Again, when I first got up, came out of the Navy and got into the higher ed world, and the Navy, I spent a lot of time in budgeting and resourcing, and so I got to my campus and things were good. The first 2 years we had a lot of money, and of course 2008-9 came along and the bottom fell out. And then I started myself. You walk around, dang, how am I going to get out of this one? Boy, gosh, they just cut another 20% out of our budget. Blah, blah, blah. And then that negative attitude gets picked up by your workforce really quick. It's amazing how fast they pick it up. And so they pick it up, and then you hear them repeating that back on campus and parroting that back on campus, and it really sets the wrong message. So I was really very not forceful, but very dedicated to telling those folks, you don't say no, only I say no. And so my job is to look at the requirement, find out how can I resource it. Maybe I don't have to say no today. Maybe I say, yeah, I can't do it right now, but let's take a look at this plan. And, maybe a year from now, or we get a new allocation of funding, or I'll work on this grant that could help us get this across the line. So you're not actually having to say no in that instance. You're just kind of deferring it or trying to find a way to get to yes, which is I always like to do. Is I'm always looking for the way to get to yes instead of no. But when you do have those problems, you've got. I mean, the hard one is when, let's say, you have a chancellor who says, I want to do this, and personally it's the dumbest thing in the world to do. It's going to cost 10 times what you do if you do something else. My answer there is sometimes you got to pick your battles. You just got to pick your battles and decide which one's going to work. But if it's, educate, make sure you're out there talking to folks. I always call it socializing the issue. So I'll get a hold of something like that, and I'll walk around and I'll plant the seed of how I think things ought to go versus what is going on or has been going on. And it's amazing how sometimes I'll hear it echoed back. And when I hear something being echoed back that I've worked the campus, I've talked to people, I've gone out and talked to deans, and they start repeating back my mantra, that's when I know my message is getting across. That make sense?
Well, Mike, that's perfect. And Mike, that could be a book, Getting to Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. We like your comment there. And maybe this is for Nina and you again, Mike. We have another question that came in from Sheree. And it talks about that initial question you asked of the student success. How do you measure that? How do you define it? And she defines it as showing up as inspired and motivated to learn and pursue their purpose. And so looking at that, maybe comment both of you on how does that whole facilities group assist with that?
Yeah.
Inspired.
Well, I'll take a quick.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's something. It's just when a kid hits the campus. I mean, when he walks on campus and there's a guy out cutting the grass, and or a student tour's coming through, or a kid. Do your groundskeepers occasionally stop and say, "Hey guys, how you doing? Hope everything's going well." That positive thing. I'm glad you're here. I mean, hey, under your breath, you're saying, "Yeah, you guys are paying you're responsible for my paycheck, so I'm really glad you're here." But having that positive deal, and then and making things available, giving them opportunities to try something neat, even though they're going to fail, right? We had kids a couple times, they come in with the dumbest ideas in the world, but I mean, they were so passionate about it. They wanted to put a horseshoe pit somewhere where it just isn't going to work. It's not going to work, but it's a cheap kind of thing, and they're really passionate about it. And I'd say, we're going to probably have to tear it out after a year. But these kids are so passionate. I don't want to rain on their parade. I want to keep them passionate. So I'd let them do it. And they'd learn from it. It'd fail in the year, and they go, wow, I guess that wasn't a good idea. So there was some ability for them to learn. But yet you didn't shut them down, and it makes them realize that, hey, I can be listened to. I do have power. So there's a bunch of different ways you can get kids to be inspired through how you run your department.
Yeah, Mike, I was about to build on that and revert back to the question, because it goes back to that statement of being inspired. And it goes to a slide that you had previously in the presentation of what facilities can do to contribute to that student success. And if learning is going to occur where the students are, where do students want to be? Where do they feel inspired? What are students looking for? And there's a lot of different ways to find that out. And I know APPA has different ways of doing surveys, of diving into the deep of that. But what makes a student engage in that learning environment? And it's getting to the basis of that answer that, to me, helps determine the outcome for student success.
Or just grab a couple of kids. Grab a couple of kids and ask them. And here's something that one of my colleagues, Joe Whitfield, had me do that was transformational for me is, if you haven't walked your campus tour, when the kids come to school and they're taking their campus tour for the very first time, if you haven't been on that campus tour and walked it with the students, you need to. I'm telling you. And then once you do it, have your entire staff, have the group that takes the students on the tour, take your entire staff in pieces and parts, groups, through the campus tour, so they see what the students are seeing, and it's amazing how transformational that is. Oh, I had no idea we were showing them that. Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed. If I'd known that, I would have done more flowers over there. I would have cleaned this better. So that's really transformative.
Excellent. A couple other questions. The topic of sustainability came up, and we don't believe that's going away on our campuses. I know Jill Burris out there in our APPA land. And so from net zero to greening of the games to doing different energy efficiency projects in the building. Comment a little further on that, both you and Nina, because facilities play a key role in that, and that's helping the students at their final goal, too, of graduating.
Right. Do you want to take it, or let me grab it, Nina?
Michael, I'll let you go first, and I'll come in on the back end.
Okay. So again, we did a ton of this at App State. We were ranked one of the highest schools in all the different surveys and whatnot, and it was because we got a lot of student involvement, and we built a very robust sustainability program. And again, it kind of went back to what I said earlier. I mean, we did some stuff that was kind of questionable, but we let the students get creative and let them try to do things. And some things worked out and some things didn't. And we had this huge wind generator on our campus. And I jokingly said that wasn't about economics. It took 120 years to pay for itself, but it's this huge wind generator, and it's right above our campus. It's the first thing you see when you walk on the campus. But it's more about ego than eco. But that's important because it sends a branding mission, right? It says we are a sustainable university. And so, and when kids see that, they walk on the campus and they see that wind generator, they go, wow, this place is pretty cool. Now, most of them think like, oh, that generator powers the whole campus, right? It powers like the chancellor's house. But it's still an important statement. And so how you build that, through facilities, you may have to want to convert to 100% renewable power, but you can't do it on your campus. So what you do is you build your stuff off campus and you put a few demonstration projects on campus, let the kids do them so they can demonstrate on campus that, yeah, we're sustainable. So things like that is quite helpful, or sustainability gardens or whatever it may be.
Perfect. Nina, any comments on that?
Well, I would say that what students view as sustainability versus what facility managers view as sustainability might be two different things, because what you might be doing in your central utility plant, the students may not feel or see or touch. And so making sure there's messaging around sustainability, branding around sustainability, and some of the definition of what needs to be done for sustainability, so that students know what they can own and and have a better understanding of what the campus environment is doing to support them in their desire to be on a sustainable campus.
Perfect. Well, listen, we got probably 20 more questions, but we're running out of time, so we're going to start closing it up. Mike, you have any final thoughts? This has been a great webinar, a lot of great responses.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I'm sorry about a little bit of the technical difficulties in between, but if we go to the next slide, a little bit shameless plug here. So, like, if everybody join us August 3rd and 5th in Washington, D.C. for APPA 2018, right? And we're going to release the 2018 monograph, which talks about enterprise risk management. And let me tell you, I thought I knew what student success was. I also thought I knew what enterprise risk management was. And man, I was way off base. So it's really, you need to come and learn about that, because enterprise risk management is a huge thing that I think facilities has a big piece of. And I think many of us don't realize it and how important it is. So come and learn that. And of course, the Senior Facilities Officer Summit, the day before, I'll be chairing that and I'll be facilitating it. We'd love to see you there in Washington, D.C. That's it.
Thank you, Mike. And Nina, any final thoughts?
No, I was about to say, while Mike gave a shameless plug, if you want to reference this monograph or any of the others, they are available on the APPA website. And so don't hesitate to go there to read more.
Thank you. Mike, while we got you on the line, go back to your final top 10, because we have somebody who wants to do a screenshot. And as we wrap up, Nina, I want to thank Jacobs. APPA thanks you very much for your partnership with our Thought Leader series over the years. It's been extremely successful, giving our senior leaders, our chief financial officers, a lot of great information to address the opportunities we have within our facilities field. So thank you and Jacobs very much. Thank you for taking time today. Mike, you did just an outstanding job. I look forward to meeting you in Washington, D.C. And again, we've had a great turnout on this webinar. These will continue as I go into the past present in August. But this continues giving back to our members, and our members have said they want useful information. Next month, we're going to be doing on July, we're changing the date just a little bit, July 24th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to have design and operation of water-based systems to minimize Legionella proliferation. Gary Dorfman, expert in this field, will be covering that. And so with that said, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Nina. Again, we appreciate very much all your help and Jacob's support. Mike, outstanding job. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the week.